It was my turn to take my kids trick-or-treating. The previous year, it was my wife's, and we trade back and forth every year. My son and daughter were aged 7 and 9. Usually, I stay on the street while my kids go up to different houses to collect candy. About half an hour of walking around, we came to one of the more popular hotspots for candy collecting, a main street in the neighborhood with lots of really cool decorations and animatronics on people's lawns. I became a bit distracted and stopped watching my kids closely. At one point, they came back from a house accompanied by another girl, about the same height as my daughter. She was wearing a weird homemade mask, like a cardboard cutout or something. My daughter asked if she could trick-or-treat with us, so I said sure, and we carried on together as a group. I didn't know who this girl was, but I figured she was a friend from school. As we continued, I started to notice a large man trailing us. He was wearing some sort of angry cat mask. It was kind of creepy, to be honest. I thought that maybe he was the father of the girl, so I tried to start up some small chat with him. I said something like, "Nice weather, eh?" But he didn't respond. He just stood there staring at me, while our kids went up to the stairs to the next house. I tried again, asking, "Hey, is that your daughter?" He nodded, but didn't say anything. I figured he just wasn't in the mood for chatting, so I stopped trying. We carried on for another 15 minutes, until suddenly my kids came up to me and said they wanted to go home. This surprised me as we hadn't been out for too long, and their bags were only about a third full. In any case, I agreed, waved goodbye to the man in the cat mask and his daughter, and started on our way home. The weird thing is that when I glanced back, the man and his daughter were just standing there, staring at us. I checked one more time as we turned the corner, and they were still standing there, not having moved at all. At this point, I decided to ask my kids, "So who was that girl?" My daughter looked up at me with a confused look on her face. "She's your friend," my daughter replied. I asked her what she meant. Apparently, the girl with the cardboard mask approached them and said she was a friend of mine. She told my daughter she was too shy to ask me if she could join to trick-or-treat, and wanted my daughter to ask me instead. I laughed at this story and replied to my daughter, "Why would you think she's my friend? I don't have any children friends." What my daughter said next chilled my bones. According to her, when the girl with the cardboard mask approached them for the first time, she wasn't wearing the mask, so they were able to see her face. As it turns out, she wasn't a girl at all, but an older woman around my age with wrinkles on her face. What's even more disturbing, the older woman had started to steal treats from my daughter's bag, apparently when I wasn't looking. This is why they asked me to go home. The old woman was creeping them out and they just wanted to get away from her. I brought my kids home and told my wife what happened. We made sure to check through all their candy and didn't find anything suspicious or off. We didn't call the police or anything, since nothing really happened. But thinking back, I kind of regret that decision now. What the heck was that old woman doing, and who the hell was that man following us around? I don't think I'll ever know. I just think it's sick that there are people out there on Halloween, hiding behind masks, pretending to be children. This happened in October of 2010, and the reason I can accurately remember that is because this event took place when we were on our way to watch the premiere of Paranormal Activity 2. I was 16 at the time, and although my suburb is rather large and located within close proximity to a big city, there wasn't much to do as a teenager outside of smoking a little weed, driving around and listening to music, or in this case, going to a movie. So 3 of my friends, including my brother and sister, all piled into my sister's beat-up Buick, with the plan of smoking a couple of bowls and heading to the movie. I don't in any way mean to glorify smoking, but I do feel like it's necessary to include to lend to the idea of paranoia that is possible inside the car of a bunch of weed-smoking teenagers. Although, in those types of situations, you're usually paranoid of the police giving you a ticket, or of your parents calling and figuring out what you're up to. This was a bit beyond that, you could say. The residential neighborhoods in my area are essentially maze-like. They all connect, and if you know where you're going, you can drive around the entire town for hours without ever so much as crossing over a main road, which served us perfectly. Our aim was to drive around a while, and once we were ready, we would head to the movie. It was a midnight premiere, so it was dark, and throughout the whole drive, we didn't see another car on the road. We had just decided to head to the theater when we came around a corner to a part of the road where you could visibly see about a quarter mile in front of you with no obstruction, and right in the middle of the street, about 100 feet in front of us, was a woman, standing with her back turned to us. The woman was standing directly under a streetlight, dressed in a white robe, which in the light genuinely made it look like a hospital gown. She didn't move. She didn't react to our headlights, to the sound of our approach. She just stood still, looking straight ahead, in the middle of the road. From our best guess, we figured her to be in her 60s or 70s, just based on her stringy white hair and general physique. We all just stared at her. No one spoke. No one did anything, including the woman in the street. For 15 seconds or so, we were all still, waiting to see if the obvious presence of a vehicle behind her would make her do anything at all. But it didn't. She just stood there, back turned to us, staring right in front of her, with nothing but empty street looking back. I cannot exaggerate how straight out of a horror film this situation was. She looked like Patient Zero from a zombie movie. So as smart people do who don't want to be murdered by some spooky Halloween witch, we turned around right there in the middle of the street and noped out of it. It spooked us so much that we all decided to just skip the movie, so we dropped off our friends and just went home. She looked so scary, so entirely out of place that I wholeheartedly believe most people would have had the same reaction that we did. I'm just glad that she didn't turn around. About a year ago, I got an Alaskan Malamute puppy. I was so excited to have a dog, I wanted to go hiking with him, camping, and traveling. It was fall in Iowa, so it can get pretty cold for camping, so I decided to start researching cabin rentals. I had found an amazing cabin in Wisconsin on Airbnb. It was fully loaded, very secluded in the middle of the woods, had a hot tub, internet, pool table, and a great kitchen. This cabin was so beautiful and it was pretty cheap to rent. The first time I had visited this cabin, it was great. It was just me and my dog. I relaxed, we went hiking, I cooked a great dinner, and I slept pretty well. I only stayed one night, it was just a quick getaway on my day off from work. After getting home, I told my friend Martha about this great cabin. She was eager and wanted to take a trip with me, so we decided to go up the night before Halloween. We took off, just Martha, my dog, and myself. That night we had a blast. We drank, cooked dinner, chilled in the hot tub, and then decided to watch scary movies since it was so close to Halloween. Now, I was pretty drunk, but when I was standing in the kitchen, I could have sworn I saw Martha run down the basement stairs, which were right off from the kitchen where I was standing. But when I looked over into the living room, Martha was sitting on the couch, still watching the movie. I was so freaked out, but again, I was drunk, so I kind of blew it off. We both ended up passing out pretty late and nothing too exciting happened. But what happened the next morning is what made me a solid believer in the paranormal. I was always sort of a skeptic when it came to ghosts. I had some experiences that were weird, but I could always somehow justify it as something else, so I always had that doubt in the back of my mind. But that morning, we were pretty hungover. We ate a little breakfast and then decided to go sit in the hot tub. So I decided to lock my dog in his crate and we went outside to get in the tub. It was really magical because it was literally Halloween and it was dumping down snow. We sat in the hot tub for maybe 15 minutes, but then we heard a big bang inside the cabin and my dog barking at something. We got out of the tub and ran inside and literally froze in our footsteps. The entire kitchen was torn apart. All the cabinets were open. The refrigerator door and top freezer door were open. The bar chairs were all flipped onto their backs. Drawers were open and pans were thrown off shelves. Martha's phone was charging on the counter and it was now unplugged and on the floor. I have no other explanation than paranormal. My dog looked terrified, but there was no way that he tore up the kitchen. He was still a puppy, so he wasn't that big, and he was also still locked in his crate. The kitchen was trashed. I know Martha didn't do it because we were both outside at the same time. There was also no way that someone broke into the cabin. We were in the middle of nowhere and it was snowing, so there would have been footsteps. The hot tub is also right next to the long driveway leading to the cabin, so we would have seen somebody drive up for sure. I just have no other explanation on what happened, so now I'm a believer and so is Martha. We left pretty soon after this happened, and believe it or not, I actually stayed in the cabin again, but nothing ever happened. Maybe Halloween stirred up the spirits and they just wanted to be heard or seen in some way, and maybe I really did see a ghost the night before as well.